Hi everyone, it's Victoria here, and welcome to the podcast. Before we begin, I wanted to let you know about the free courses the Victoria Stilwell Academy has available to enroll in right now for dog geeks like you. Just go to vsdogtrainingacademy.com and click the enroll button, and you'll see the free course options. That's vsdogtrainingacademy.com. See you there. I've just read one of the most important books, one of the most enjoyable books that I've ever read about, I don't even know, like putting it in terms of dog training is right, but a book that's going to help you better understand, have a better relationship with your dog, and parent your dog in the right way. I am joined by my guest, Wendy Sunshine. She's an award-winning journalist. She has co-authored best-selling child development books. She also helps us with Positively, and we love having her on the team. She has written this book, which you can now get, called Tender Paws: How Science-Based Parenting Can Transform Our Relationship with Dogs. It is absolutely fascinating. And so welcome to the podcast, Wendy. I am so glad that you can join me to talk about this amazing piece that you've written.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I'm just thrilled to be here. And just as a preface to it, thank you for all you do to support people and their dogs living together well. Everything from the Dog Behavior Conference to Positively to the Victoria Stilwell Academy. It's just amazing what you have contributed to the welfare of so many.
Thank you.
I'm getting teary already.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Well, I want to dive right in. Can you explain what this book is?
This book was the result of a journey that I started with a little rescue puppy, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. As many of us who take home puppies with the best of interest and intent. But our puppy had actually been taken from its mother and litter mates too soon. And I was unaware of this until reality and the dog, time went by and I started running into challenges that I just could not handle. I mean, this was like master class raising dogs, and I was a newbie. I had lived with dogs before. I had taken home rescue dogs, and, you snap a leash on them and get on with it and everybody's fine. At least that's how I thought of dogs. And this puppy just, I was being nipped. I was being scratched. There was chaos in the house. My cats were hiding, or the funniest one was one cat would stay and wait and go whack right on the puppy when the puppy would go. It was just bedlam. And I just had fears that the puppy was going to grow up to kill the cats and nothing would be the same. And really, I was ready to bring the dog back to the shelter, out of truth be told. And my husband, God bless him, he saw the potential in this puppy. Plus he snuggled with the puppy every night and did not want to lose his little buddy. And I was between a rock and a hard place, honestly. And I was looking in the dog training manuals, and nothing really spoke to what I was dealing with. I had gotten some good tips. They'd helped me already house train the puppy, and really very easily. So I was so startled why I was having all these troubles. I could not figure it out. And in a moment of desperation, the dark night of the soul, I was examining, what am I going to do? And then I thought, I have become a struggling parent, and I have just helped write a book for struggling parents. And so maybe there's something there for me. Even though I had helped write this book, I hadn't looked at it in terms of, real life for me. And I went back to that book, and it just gave me ideas, and it opened my eyes. And I thought, well, let me just try one little technique. And the very next morning when I tried that technique, it was like, whoa, just completely transformed everything for us. And It's what I call a do-over.
I'm going to ask you about that. I'm going to ask you about that a bit later, but I want to interrupt you because
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I want to go from the beginning, because could you tell us about your journey writing these books? Because
Sure.
that's where it really starts.
Fair enough. Yes. I had been writing for some local papers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and my wonderful editor, Gail Reeves, pleaded with me to please go do this interview with these. And she sold it to me. She said, these are professors at Texas Christian University, and they are making breakthroughs with these struggling children adopted from overseas or from child protective services that nobody else seems to reach. And they're doing wonderful work. Would you please go talk to them and let's do a story. So I got into it, and I met these just amazing people, Dr. Karen Purvis and Dr. David Cross. And it was such an interesting article. And by the end of it, we had really connected, the three of us, and they asked me to help them write a book that they said, we want to reach more families. We want to help more families. Can you help us do it? And so that was a great privilege of my life, really. And, so we worked on that, and it was like I was their honorary graduate student. They just tutored me in everything, attachment theory and, developmental needs and sensory integration, and just so many different aspects that, I had been unaware of before. But they were using these techniques with these children with amazing results. They led a camp called the Hope Connection Camp, where they basically tried to help these children feel safe and have a very structured environment where they met all their needs in a very appropriate way. And the results were unbelievable. There were kids who had trouble learning. They hadn't been physically growing. And within a week or two, the parents reported tremendous improvement. It was astonishing. And so they went on to develop what's called trust-based relational intervention. That was the name of Karen and David's approach. And you'll notice that word trust and relationship are built into that, right? And that is so much with what you do with dogs, for example, just teaser. And so I had done that, and right at the end of helping write that, that's when we got the puppy. So that was fresh in my mind, and that's why I just thought, wait a minute, they help really struggling kids, and this is a struggling puppy. Maybe there's something here. And I later went on to help write another parenting book for challenging children too. And I was just struck because I had taken home a new dog at that point, and there were new issues, but they still all fit the same paradigm. It was just, it's such a support to me. It also helped me think through the learning I brought to it, the way I had been parented, and what that meant for how I parented little ones. And I use the term little ones broadly to mean like children and dogs, because they're dependent on us, right? It's a special relationship that we set up.
The Connected Child then was your first book. And just after you'd written The Connected Child, was this when you got your puppy? And this, yes. and that was Hazel.
That was Hazel. Yes. This is that first book.
Okay.
And yes. I kind of consider the lead author on that book the godparent of my puppy, because there is a story in the book, right, where she literally met the puppy, and she was the one who helped open my eyes. I mean, it was kind of funny. The first things out of her mouth were, "Has she pooped yet?" I'm like, who comes in someone's house and just like asks about poop, right? I was like, well, welcome to the world of parenting. But as soon as she said that, I thought, well, I don't recall seeing. Oh my goodness. And that's when she said, she's so little, her mama would lick her belly and help her system, move. And you have to do that now because her mama's not here. So Karen just showed me how to use a damp washcloth and stroke her belly and give her a little oil on her nose. And sure enough, I think that helped. But all these things were part of the signs eventually, like, whoa, this isn't what I anticipated in my in my eagerness, or not so eager.
I think that's fascinating, especially when, I've worked for so long in rescue and have been present for many puppy mill busts in this state. And the thing that I have realized and recognized, that when these puppies are brought up in sterile, very stressful environments, they actually are most of the time brought up with their mums. So they do have, even though the environment is dreadful, they do have their mother being able to do that. That's a very sort of basic thing that needs to be done. But the when they come to a home, when they transition to a home, which is always mostly too early, it's exactly what you have experienced of this puppy needs that still. And we don't understand that, even that process of pooping, which is so important. I know that as a young mother of a child, of a baby, of an infant, that's the very first thing we did. I remember that straight away when I brought the baby home from hospital, I had to log and write, and I was diligent about doing it every single time. When she first pooped, every single time she pooped, every single, like how, if she doesn't, if she gets constipation, I mean, all of these things had to be checked and logged, because I know that if I didn't, and that if she didn't have a bowel movement, she would not be comfortable. She would cry. She would be, and she can't tell me how she feels. So it takes me back to that time of like how important something like pooping is, and it's indelicate, isn't it? Of course. But when you have a child or when you have a dog, the poop becomes exceedingly important. It still is. For my senior dog, it still is. Has she pooped yet? How was her poop? Was it well formed? How does that indicate how healthy she is? If she is uncomfortable, if she looks like she doesn't feel great, has she been out to toilet? Those things are still important. Okay, so you have this puppy, Hazel, that is a cute puppy, but then starts to grow up. And I want to read an excerpt from the book, because I'm sorry, but it made me laugh. Your pain made me laugh. Okay, so she had some medical issues, and you're right. But then this is what happens. Once the medical problems disappeared, so did our small, docile puppy. Gone was the malleable muffin head we had adopted. Gone, for that matter, was any resemblance to any of the easygoing adult dogs I had ever lived with in the past. This creature was mushrooming in size and greeted each new day like the crack from a starter's gun. She ricocheted around the house, skidding into furniture and doors, pouring it all in her path. If I bent to pet her short velour coat, she sprang and snapped like an angry jack-in-the-box. Attempts to leash her for a walk were met with lashing teeth and sharp nails. Red welts laced my arms. Little Hazel had transformed from a fuzzy lump of putty into a demon out to get me. Wendy, you're not alone. I think there's many people that have raised puppies that can say, yeah, gotcha. Know how that feels. What was that like for you?
Oh, it was so stressful. It was so stressful. I was trying to do my best, and I just felt like I was failing at every turn. And what was scary was it felt like we were adversaries. And it took my returning to that book for me to realize, the parenting book, that we didn't need to be adversaries, that we were actually adversaries against the problems together, and that I could be her ally once I started to see more from her perspective and what was going on. Because there was all this transformation going on. And I'm sure this is true with some of those adolescent dogs that suddenly get whacked out too, because their hormones but with her, it was partly just growth and sensory development. I mean, you think about it. Here's this big giant coming on over you with a hand, to first off, just standing over you when you're kind of getting your bearings, and then putting a collar on and a leash. And for a small creature who's sensory system isn't really fully developed, it might have felt like she was being stung or attacked, or she couldn't figure out what was going on. And so she was just freaking. And my hand happened to be in the way. So it wasn't that she was out to bite me or scratch me, but she was just expressing her discomfort and fear. And once I began to appreciate that, it just gave me so much more compassion for what she was going through. And it made it easier for me to, okay, I got to step back and rethink this and meet her where she is, and not assume that she's a grown up dog who I can just treat like a grown up dog and, who's been with a family for 3 years. I mean, it's just completely new. She's every bit as new, and her nervous system was developing. And that's something we often forget, that has to happen. All that touching, all that banging into things, that's actually an important part of development. It's fun to watch when we understand what it is, but that they're like skidding into things. Well, they don't know how to control those muscles yet. They're figuring that out, and we have to give them the space and understanding to do that. I have to share a funny thing, Victoria, that at the same time I was raising my puppy, I had a girlfriend in this nearby, and she was raising a little toddler. And her son was ricocheting around the house, very much like Hazel, except that she was so worried about her son, she put a little helmet on him because he would just barrel through the house, and she didn't want him to bash his skull so badly that he would have brain damage. But we were laughing because it was so parallel, that he just was, a spitfire full of energy, and so is the puppy. And you just have to kind of set the environment up so that it's safer for them. And let their systems advance as it needs to, and then be there to be the safe, supportive presence that they require.
Of course, of course. Well, here's where I would like to read another thing, because this is where you take stock and you go back to what Karen had told you, and something that you write, a parenting pearl in the book, The Connected Child. The beauty so this is called a redo, isn't it? The beauty of a redo is that it catches an inappropriate action in progress and says, whoa, let's go back and do this again differently. Immediate practice is an aid to developing mastery, just like in any skill, whether it's riding a bicycle, learning to read, or playing a game. By actively replacing behavior with correct behavior in your child's memory banks, you can help the child encode competency. A redo erases the muscle memory of the failed behavior and gives the child the physical and emotional experience of substituting a successful one in its place. Oh my goodness. Everyone is listening to this. This is a dog trainer or has dogs goes, oh my goodness, it is the same. So you call it the do-over.
Right.
How did you implement the do-over with Hazel and those very sharp teeth?
Yeah. So in the morning when I came down to greet her, I'm getting teeth, and I was trying to touch her, and I thought, okay, rather than get myself aggravated again, I'm going to try to channel Karen Purvis. And I used the term do-over. It's a redo. But as much for anything, it was for me as it was for the puppy. And in this case, what I did was, okay, I'm going to back up physically. I'm going to go lower to her level. I'm going to calm myself. And what I did is I just kneeled down, and I reached my hand out just really quietly, and in fact, I think I did it partly sideways too, so I wouldn't overwhelm her. Because even that straight coming on was a little scary to her. So I just knelt down and offered my hand, and I just said in a very calm voice, do-over. And I just tried to model that calm. And I just waited. I had my hand out. She was still a few feet away. And as I waited, she just settled, which was brilliant. and she just settled herself. And then she crept forward very slowly, and she reached her nose out, and then she gave me one lick. And I have to tell you, this was not a licking dog. This was the first time ever. And it was very gentle. It was one gentle lick, and then she just sat back and she just waited. And it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind. I thought, oh my God, like, she wants to connect. She just didn't know how, and I had to make it easy for her. So the do-over, it let her connect with me in a safe way. And it let me see that she wasn't out to get me. She actually wanted to be part of the family. She just didn't know how. And that was just such a moment. It was such an eye-opening moment. I practically swooned with joy because it just showed me that we could find a different path together.
Yeah, incredible. Moving forward, let's talk attachment biology. Let's get scientific here. You write that infants need responsive caregiving to spark neural activity in the brain and activate healthy development. And we know, and studies have shown, again, those puppies that have been raised in deprived environments like puppy mills that don't have that all-important touch actually have lighter brains than puppies that are raised in stimulating environments, which I think is it's tragic and fascinating at the same time. That those puppies were not exposed to the enrichment that they needed to form those very important neural pathways in the brain.
It's mind-blowing. And the simple things that we can do to overcome it when we bring a puppy home. I mean, that's the funny thing. I used to laugh at my husband for putting the puppy in his armpit. Basically, they would sleep and the puppy would have her nose right there, and they would watch TV together. They were happy. And I just thought, is that bizarre? And I later came to realize how valuable that was for the puppy, because she didn't have her litter mates with the touch to give her that pressure and that interaction. And so when they don't have that, if we bring them home, we can provide some of that. And we need to be mindful if they're too long isolated, perhaps in a crate or something like that. What, the opportunity that's being missed at those important formative times, and the puppy mill experience that you have and the research you point out is just amazing and scary, but really important to know.
The role of oxytocin is very important in attachment, isn't it? We know studies, I will mispronounce her name, but Dr. Ulnus Moberg in Sweden, she's kind of the oxytocin queen, has done studies showing that when the mothers hold their newborn babies for the very first time, there is a surge of oxytocin that helps with bonding. And indeed, studies have also shown that that happens. We get a surge of oxytocin when we pet our dogs. But also, even more interestingly, dogs will also get the surge of oxytocin when, for example, they see you, they haven't seen you for a while, and you come home from work and they're so excited to see you. They also have that surge. How important is the role of oxytocin in attachment?
It's vitally important. It's just so instrumental, and we all have it. And that's what they call attachment neurobiology. It's oxytocin working in tandem with dopamine and other cortisol and serotonin. There's a whole chemical cocktail going on in our bodies, and it's designed to promote bonding and healthy relationships, because we're born very vulnerable. And without each other, we don't survive as well. So nature has set us up with this incredible biochemistry to support that. And that's part of what we love about our dogs. They give us that feel-good rush, and we give it to them. It's beautiful. One thing that I loved, speaking of research, when I discovered that there are specific receptors in the skin that trigger the release of oxytocin and serotonin and all this. And it's unique to mammals. And so that, it's like their whole job in our skin is to produce that and encourage that bonding ultimately through touch. It's extraordinary how nature has set us up to connect this way.
And expanding on that, even just the way a puppy looks, like a way a baby looks, can encourage that bonding, can't it? Because we're attracted to beings with large eyes, big heads, large eyes that almost fill up the entire head. We're kind of drawn to that. How crafty nature is, in a way that it's set us up like that, so that we do bond, because we're attracted to it and still are, even when we don't have children, or we're still attracted to the big puppy eyes.
We are, and it's a very sneaky thing that puppies do to us. they get in under our skin, and that's why I think it's like politicians they don't want to be in a room with puppies or little children, because our eyes are always drawn there instead of to them, and that's true for us too. It's that biochemistry is extraordinary, and that's why also certain breeds that we love, we think are so cute, because they're more puppy-like as they grow older too. I think it's called neoteny.
Yes. Yeah, it is neoteny. Where the French bulldog, the breeds that are bred to have those large eyes, Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. I mean, it's almost like we're being pandered to by people breeding these dogs, so that, and of course the French bulldog, I think, has just become the number one dog in the UK. I think it's very popular here in the US as well, but it's become the most popular dog in the UK because, I think in a large part, because of the way that it looks. We're just drawn to it, regardless of the conformation of these poor animals that have terrible breathing issues. Hopefully, I mean, that's for another discussion. But yes, it's fascinating anyway, how all of this works. When we come, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, I want to talk about our needs and our puppies' needs and how we can share them. We'll be right back. A quick break here to get a word from this episode's sponsor, the Victoria Stillwell Academy. Now, did you know that I have a school that teaches people to be dog trainers? I love It's Me or the Dog and my work as a dog trainer on television, but those of you who know me know that my true passion really lies with helping other people live their best lives with dogs. And I love seeing that truly magical transformation when that light bulb goes off with someone I'm helping with their dog. That's what it's all about. It's the secret sauce that pet professionals like me, who work with these amazing animals, that's what we all share. It's what makes being a dog trainer the most rewarding and enriching job I can imagine. It's why I love what I do. And it's also why I founded the Victoria Stillwell Academy, so that I could provide a roadmap to others who want to help dogs and the people who love them learn to do what they love doing at the highest level. That is, to become professional dog trainers. Earning a living working with dogs professionally, it's been a dream of mine for years. And that passion is what drives all of us at VSA to create courses that are specially designed to help adult human learners chase their dreams. Now, most people already know about our flagship dog trainer course, which provides both online only and in-person options. But did you know that we also offer both dog guardians and future professionals a fully refundable 10-hour online course taught by me and other awesome VSA faculty, and it's called the Fundamentals of Dog Training and Behavior course. Now, I know it's not the sexiest name, but it's one of the most dynamic learning experiences available to dog geeks, and it's a pretty awesome first step to see if learning with VSA is right for you. Now, as a Positively Podcast listener, you can use promo code PODCAST right now to get the Fundamentals course for 50% off. That is $150 value. So, take our course. Plus, we also have a couple of free starter courses. They're free, completely free, including a course called Building Your Dog's Confidence, which reveals the secret ingredient to a happy dog life. So, I encourage you to check out VSA today. As I said, we have courses for all levels of learners. So it doesn't matter whether you're a newbie with your first puppy or a grizzled vet already making a living as a pet professional. Visit positively.com/VSA to learn more and enroll in a free course. That is positively.com/VSA. We all want the best for our dogs, whether that means you taking home some key tips for your own dogs or adding the ultimate in professional dog trainer education. Visit positively.com/VSA today. VSA, it is the future of dog training. And now, back to the podcast. I'm back speaking with Wendy Sunshine about her fantastic book, Tender Paws. And this is such a fascinating journey. We've talked about attachment, the role of oxytocin, how we're sort of chemically encouraged to bond with not just people of our own species but other species as well. But let's talk about shared needs. This is interesting. I'm going to read from the book again. And it says, humans have a habit of raising others' offspring. This phenomenon is called alloparenting and is seen in social species from dolphins and monkeys to humans. Alloparenting usually occurs within a single species, such as when we adopt orphaned children. But it also occurs across species. It's reasonable to describe our life with dogs as a type of alloparenting, considering how often we invite dogs into our homes and the terms we choose to describe them. People's relationship with pet dogs has much in common with the classic definition of parent-child attachment. We're drawn to be near each other. We gain comfort from the other's presence, and we feel distress at prolonged separation. With so much biological similarity and affinity between our species, it seems natural that we would care for a dog or puppy, much like we would parent a child. Talk about these shared needs.
Sure. It's so interesting. Just like children, dogs need to develop in stages, right? They don't just pop out of the womb fully formed and adult. They advance through certain stages. And of course, they need food and water and shelter, the standard needs. So we all share that. We also need social relationships because we're born vulnerable. And so that's a very important part of a need, that social need. We also need to be taught and assisted in a careful, sequential, incremental manner. So it's called scaffolding in child development circles, where it's like you build a scaffold, you build that ladder to help improve step by step the skills and the learning. And there's also the need to seek and find things. And we are predators. We don't often think of ourselves that way, but we are.
Oh, we are. We're dangerous. We're the most dangerous predators.
Exactly. And dogs are predators. So we have that in common. And that drive to find things, it helps us find mates to reproduce. It helps us find food to survive. It helps us stay safe and get the things that we need. And so it's interesting for children. They need to play and explore and find, just like puppies need to play and explore and find. And all of them need to feel safe. This was something that I found fascinating. It's not just a woo-woo, oh, we want them to feel safe, and it's just a nice to have. Actually, our biochemistry does not work properly if we don't get enough time during which we feel safe, because the body shifts its biochemistry if there's a threat versus safety. And during that safe period, it restores. We can sleep, we can digest, we can repair the systems that may be damaged or tired or, or fatigued. So safety isn't just about we know they're safe, but we have to help them feel safe. And does this sound familiar from the round table that we recently had?
Oh, yes, it does. It's part of our harmony model. Safety and wellness is the absolute top of that.
Exactly. So all these needs, and I'm glad you brought up harmony model because I wanted to point it out. It just also addresses all this 360 degrees of needs to really support a little one, just like you do for children. The dogs also have those same needs. And once we break it down that way, we can start to address them more directly.
Let's pivot a tiny bit and reframe naughty. When your child misbehaves, they're naughty children. I always find this fascinating. I remember when I was a young mom and I was filming Fritz Meal the dog, and it meant that I had to take my baby at the time to and from the UK because It's Meal the dog started in the UK, and my husband was working over here in the States. And so sometimes it meant that my daughter Alex and I would travel together. And at that time, you know, filming a show is very nice that I was flown business class. And so this is an international flight, right? It's around 9 hours from Atlanta to the UK. It's about 7.5 to 8 hours. But from the UK back, it's around 9 hours, depending on how the winds are. Now, that's a long time for any baby, and we're talking about a year old. It's a long time for any baby to fly. And so I would, at that time, before she was 2 years old, you know, she would come and sit in my seat with me. I would come onto the plane, and all these, mostly businessmen, I'd say, were in business class. And here I was coming on the plane with my baby and sitting down in business class. And I could see all these men looking at me going, bloody hell. Here we have this mother and this child is going to cry all the time. And it's just going to be a nightmare. And I remember sitting next to a guy, and he gave me such a bad look. And I said to him, I was like, I know what you're thinking, know exactly what you're thinking, because I feel the same when I'm not traveling without my daughter. But I can tell you, you're going to have a great flight. He had a great flight. One of the reasons why is that my daughter was not really a fusser, but I had prepared so beautifully. I had prepared with enrichment, with food, with rest time, with sleep time. I had books, I had activities, everything gentle. If she needed to move around, we moved around. We took care of her poop needs too. I mean, I did everything quietly and calmly. And at the end of the flight, the guy next to me was like, "You were right." And I just see in these people's faces that they were thankful. But it's only because I had prepared. But another thing that these people said is, your baby is so good. And I was like, yes, she is good. But what does that word mean? If she was screaming and crying, she might have done because her stomach hurt, because her ears are feeling funny in the airplane. Maybe she was feeling pain. In that, if she was loud, does that mean that I would have had a bad baby? And then I think about our dogs. I mean, we look at children when they have a tantrum or misbehave, we label that as naughty or bad. And we do the same with our dogs. Yet when our dogs are calm and quiet, oh, they're so good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's difficult sometimes for us to realize that naughty, if we think about what's really going on, it's really there's need going on. They're needy. And if we can swap those thoughts in our brain, we can come to it like you did, because you anticipated those needs. You knew your daughter on that plane she would probably need to move. She would need some food. She would need some rest time. She would need comforting. And so you had set up the environment and you planned to meet those needs. And that's the beauty of it, because if we realize that naughty is often a way to mean needy, then just like a nonverbal child, before they have language, they can't tell us, hey, my stomach hurts. Oh, I got a toothache. Man, it's driving me crazy. Or, oh, my back, I wrenched my back, whatever that the dog may be trying to express. That's a need. And if we can find a way to meet that need that's appropriate, and is a win-win for everybody. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. That's parenting at its best, to where we anticipate and we meet in the moment. And also we see them for who they are, at that moment in their life. This is what they need. And thank you for raising the point of moving too, because that's another need that dogs share with children. It helps our brains. It's amazing. There's studies that show just 15 minutes of movement can improve our mood and help us regulate our emotions. So part of that being good is self-regulation, and we can empower that by giving them that time, that exercise they need, in a safe, appropriate manner.
You say that avoiding confrontational discipline is very important. Now, people who listen to this podcast are very savvy when it comes to that. I don't think they really listen to it if they're not. But we do have people come and join that maybe use a bit more confrontational discipline with their kids as well as their dogs. If you are to avoid it, and we know the reasons why we need to avoid it, how do you discipline? How do you discipline a child correctly? And how do you discipline a dog correctly? Because you can't let the dog run riot.
Right. There are two important factors, I would say. And one is setting up the environment with limits in such a way that they have fewer choices to cause the mayhem you want. But one of the guidances I love from the Connected Child and the parenting experts is they say, use a side swipe, not a head-on collision. Right? So you want to find a way to achieve your goal with the least confrontation, and you can do that. For example, children who are kind of wound up and having troubles, telling them no can be really inflame them and get them very, acting out in ways you don't want. So how do you tell a child, for example, no, when you mean no, but where the word itself is like a trigger? So you can thank them for doing the thing you want before they even have a chance. So you're sort of like, oh, thank you for speaking so respectfully. Oh, thank you for opening the door. Thank you for sitting, being so polite. Or thank you for accepting no. Right now, I can't give you that, but thank you. And so if we think with the dogs, well, thank you for not, thank you for accepting no, that you can't go out right now, but here's a chew. And this will be a good way for you to get that energy out because I can't take you out right now. Or sometimes really you don't need to pay them with food. Sometimes they just want acknowledgement. It's very interesting. But you're thinking of ways that you don't have to go like this. You find a way that you can work together as a team and you can show respect. It's a fascinating thing. Mutual respect, right? I think that's really foundational to these sorts of parenting, the skills. Confrontation sometimes, well, it's like you respect me, but I don't want to respect you. Well, can we do it both ways? How can we do this in a way we honor, each other? So
what you're saying, if you don't mind me interrupting, what you're saying then is that saying thank you, or we don't have to use food all the time. No, we don't have to, but just that acknowledgement. I know from being a mom and raising my child that kids love acknowledgement. They need to be heard. They need to be acknowledged. And that using discipline on a child, it blows my mind how anybody, a big adult, could hit a little child to use physical violence. It just blows my mind. Your brain is much more advanced. It is, better. And yet you have to resort to that because you're so out of control. And you resort to that by hitting a child. And we know now that people do that less and less, but sometimes people do that. They let themselves go down that road. And I think that shows and sets a terrible precedence for the child as it's growing, saying almost that normalizing violence. And again, this is not us being soft. I want to read just a little part of your book where there is a dog expert here. I won't name them on here, but I found this really interesting because you do have experts come in and tell their stories. And this person is very, very, I mean, I love the way that this person is so honest. And they say, as a dog trainer, when I started, I was an aversive trainer. Not happy about it now, but that's all I knew. If a dog was wrong, it had to get punished. No questions asked. My philosophy was, you'll figure it out. If you get punished enough, you figure it out yourself. You're smart. You should know better. Where was this thinking coming from other than my own trauma brain? So people who do punish, sometimes they've been punished themselves. They've gone through things themselves, and it's that perpetuating that cycle. Then he goes on to say, when I got my first bite injury and the second bite injury and made a list of money that I paid for medical care, 16,000 there, 13,000 here, with serious injuries, I was like, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Why did the dog attack me? Isn't he supposed to love me? Dogs shouldn't have to be forced to love me because I'm giving them a home. I'm taking them out of the shelter. Many trainers are taught to use aversive tools. I did it because I saved the dog from the shelter. Like my father thought he was doing the right thing. He saved me from my mother. He put me somewhere else. Everything is justified one way or the other. I justified my actions based on my trauma brain. I mean, you know, the way we learn, the way we are raised, the way we are brought up informs how we make connections with people as we grow, with our family, with our friends. And also with our dogs.
Absolutely. And that's part of why I went into such detail in the book at looking at what comprises really effective parenting, because some of us, frankly, did not get the most ideal parenting that we would have hoped for growing up. And so we come in with expectations or learning that doesn't serve everybody as best as it could. And being frank with ourselves. I mean, that was very brave of that
very
trainer.
Brave.
And I was so grateful to include that story, and a number of different stories where people started out on what they thought was the right foot and realized, wait, maybe I hadn't learned, I'm coming to this, what baggage am I bringing as I come to this relationship with the child? Just like, people say we marry one of our parents because that's what we knew, right? Well, we also parent the way we were parented often. And there are different parenting styles. And some of them can be quite harsh. And we can fall into that with that. I mean, I fell in that trap and tried to get myself out pretty quick. But, others, it takes them longer, or they just don't ever realize and put the connection together. But if we can, that really becomes the most mindful kind of parenting. It's just, and it's a journey of discovery for ourselves. And it's a beautiful thing that we can then do for the dog, who relies on us. I mean,
it takes a lot of courage. I'm always very impressed by the term crossover trainers, of people who have taught in a different way that suddenly go, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel good. I'm going to make a change. That's very courageous.
It is. Absolutely is. And I'm grateful for those people. And I really applaud, everyone who opens their eyes a little bit, to do the best they can. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And I want to just take a little sidebar to thank you for sharing some thoughts in the book too, because you really helped orient us to the readers. There's case study you shared that I just think is brilliant.
Well, I'm very, very pleased to have been asked. I'm very honored to have been asked. Thank you. Well, we are coming to the end of our podcast. So before we go, can you give us some magic ingredients, like things that we need to know about raising our dogs that as the same as we would raise our children? What are some of those magic ingredients? I look at consistency as being one of those, how inconsistent we can be as human beings and how confusing that can be for our dogs as well as our kids. What are some other magic ingredients we need?
Well, that feeling of safety is number one and number two and number three practically. And we do that through consistency and being predictable, being kind. We also, that enrichment, we talk about it in dog circles as enrichment, but in children's, circles, it's also sensory enrichment and giving them chance to move. There are just so many things. One parameter I would suggest is interesting is when we make a choice for the dog, think about how much does this make me happy and how much does this make the dog happy? So how much am I directing them and how much am I responding to what they need? And if we can pair those two together, that's really the sweet spot. And that's what we can strive for.
Wendy, we've only got through half the book. I hope you realize that. I mean, there is so much in it. I would say everybody get Tender Paws, How Science-Based Parenting Can Transform Our Relationship with Dogs. It is absolutely fascinating. And I hope that I can get you back on this podcast so where we can delve a little bit deeper as well. I know that we are running out of time. So it's such a shame because I want to talk to you for hours about this. Thank you so much for writing this book and for including so many fascinating studies and so many case studies as well and interviewing people. It was a real honor, as I said, for me to share my story with you. And I know I shared a lot more with you. And one day I'll share my other story of like why I became a dog trainer and, how my life has sort of influenced how I approach other people and how it informs the way that I work with dogs. But up till now, I just know that I feel better I feel like I've done everything that I can to raise my child right. And I try and take what I've done raising her to what I can do raising dogs and caring and looking after dogs, as well as how I can be towards other people. Because I truly believe that that's what your book shows us. It does show us how we can also not just be great at raising our dogs, but how we can be a bit more understanding of why people do things and how we can make connections with people around us. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Victoria. It was my pleasure speaking with you, as always.
We're at the end of another incredible podcast. Thanks everybody for listening. I have the greatest guests on here. And yes, join me next time when we have another wonderful guest. We learn so much. I learn so much by doing these podcasts as well. And I hope you do. Take care, everybody. And I will speak to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Victoria Stilwell's Positively Podcast. For Victoria's online dog training courses, more information, and helpful dog training tips, visit Victoria's official website at positively.com. Get connected on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media as Victoria Stilwell, and follow her on Twitter at Victoria S. Learn to become a professional dog trainer with the Victoria Stilwell Academy at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. And be sure to tune in next time as Victoria helps you and your dog live your best life together, positively.